Hey folks, right now you can pick up my book, Stormfleet, for free on Amazon.com and wherever fine ebooks are sold. Now on to the show.
Hello and welcome to Of Mooks and Monsters. I'm Rob Ward.
And I'm Tim Niederreiter, and this is episode 127 of the podcast, Narration, or Narrative, let me say. Jeez.
Yes, this is about telling the story as the game master and when you should talk as a game master. Tim has some pretty strong feelings about this one, so he's going to take the lead for us.
Yes, I love to talk, but I also love to talk as a game master. No, it's not just that. It's that there's times to use your voice as a narrative tool, right? You can tell characters stories in the game. You know, if one of your NPCs is describing something that happened to them, that can be an interesting way to have the game work if it's something important. Sometimes you want to summarize that, but sometimes you want to get in deeper, right? And that's kind of what this is all about. You know, you can give context with your narration too, and that's that, or just describe the scene. That's kind of how I see the three big things: storytelling, exposition, and description. And storytelling is something you can do without an NPC as a mediator too. But it's, you know, whatever. There's lots of context reasons to do any of this stuff.
All right. Well, with storytelling, why don't you kind of go? Let's go in depth in the order you gave them. So first, storytelling. Give us an example of how you would use storytelling in a game.
Sure. It could be a situation where the PCs, say you go with a classic detective scenario. This can happen a lot if you're doing like a Call of Cthulhu scenario where you're going around asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to get a story in response. You know, I saw the monster. I saw him eat Bill. You know, I saw him drag Bill into the shadows. That's a pretty obvious way to do it, but another way to do it and actually these kind of all feed into each other, but we can get to that later. So the key with storytelling, I think the difference is that it's about something that happened. It's how you describe an event. And I think that can work in the front, in the what I think of as the front story, the actual game as well, when you're just telling what happened, right? Like when the PCs a player makes a die roll and you describe what happens. It's kind of in between storytelling and description, but it's like you're giving a feel to the game. So The way you say something, like I still remember some of the stuff you said in your narration back in that first Mafia game. Mostly the dark arterial blood when I shot that guy with the shotgun. But and that's how
Oh yeah. Describing the color of the blood as you hit his neck. Okay.
Yeah, yikes. Anyway, yeah, mature situations will be discussed. Explicit tag, folks. However, that was the kind of thing that just those details are the key to the storytelling when it comes to describing stuff that's going on when the characters do something. But in the backstory, basically, it's more about getting the salient details across in a way that's vivid and makes sense for the character telling the story. Does that make sense?
So storytelling is more of the like using an NPC to explain like a situation that happened in the game.
Yes, let's just go with that. Yeah, narration. What I was veering in the description. That was bad, Tim. Yeah.
And narration is more of this describing what is happening through a visual lens or from another sense that's not.
Any sensory description. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And the third one's exposition.
Yes, exposition is basically, you know, is the map, the Indiana Jones map, where you just see the dotted line as they go somewhere else in the world. And that, I think that's that's useful because it's just kind of summarizing what, or 2 days later, that kind of thing. What did you do for 2 days? It's a good way. It's a way to change the scene, kind of, in a lot of the time, or to set a new scene. And it's pretty simple, really. I mean, it's as simple as 2 days later, or on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, you get off the boat, and I think
sure.
that one should be used sparingly, but it's also used quickly, so it's not particularly heavy as a tool goes.
So when you're running a game, what is the one that you want to lean towards more?
I think you want to lean toward description more, actually, which sounds weird, because at least it sounds weird to me as a writer, because I know a lot of people will say, I don't want to just hear them just tell what happened. But the thing about the other two is storytelling and exposition, is that both of them are kind of specialized tools. Description is used for just conveying the game in a way that's exciting. It gets players both hyped up and tells them what's going on. Hopefully.
Oh, so the entire show don't tell thing.
Yes. And concrete details are really important. And it doesn't have to be like measured. You don't have to say he's exactly 6 inches tall. No, he's 6'5" tall or whatever. He's a big man or whatever. You don't have to go into the detail, but saying, the room's dark, maybe you could throw in some flair there, that kind of thing. It's shadowy. There's the moon is shining through the window, whatever, adding some detail though can help the PCs get into a scene, the players get into a scene. More importantly.
Oh sure, yeah. We're like, and I think a tool to maybe use that is when you have a character, either just kind of making a quick sketch or writing out like a descriptor.
Yes,
he walks into the room, looming over the dim, blocking the doorway, the light from the outside the door, like an eclipse.
Ooh,
The scar that runs down his face is gleaming with the red tinge of infection.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah. Or we don't have to go off on examples, but they're examples, because one of the keys here is it tells you, like, what if you got in a fight with this big guy who's in the doorway? Maybe you should go for his infected scar. Maybe that'd be a good place to nail this guy if you were punching him. I don't know. It sounds like he's not the kind of guy you actually want to get in a fist fight with. You're probably in trouble. Bigger. But there's all sorts of ways to use description. And really, that's kind of what this is all boils down to. It's just ways to describe stuff to your players. Even the other two techniques are kind of the same way. They're just ways you do it with less descriptive elements, right? Exposition, you got across the ocean. We don't really care about what happened on the ocean, and that's how you're telling them that, We just care that you got there. I also think there's kind of a middle ground where you don't want to tell the players everything. You want them to be able to come with some, depending on your system, you want them to come up with some details too, because that'll get them more involved. But you kind of want to provide a jumping off point with your description for them to go forward from. For example, in that Rhesus hack game we always talk about, that game I provide a lot of context in that game. A lot of the time, informed character names, weird descriptions like, psychic lions and stuff roaming about on one place, But anyway, the point is, I think I actually did this a little poorly, because the system for that game, because Rhesus is kind of a nebulous system. You don't actually have a lot of concrete details for character traits. But that's why it would be extra important to provide more concrete details in a system like that, because then players will know what's going on more clearly, because the narrative is the big tool there.
I would disagree with your assessment of that game, that you did that poorly, because when you said nebulous lions, I knew exactly where those motherfuckers are. Still, they were outside of House Ruth. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, you remember the
I know, lion. and I remember who House Ruth is. So, and how there was that big gardeny floral arrangement. Outside their palace.
What was it? They were what kind of trees were they? I think they had these.
They were like cherry blossom, was it?
Yeah, cherry blossoms. The classic Japanese tree.
So the thing is, I still remember that important house in a system that was just full of, important houses.
Yeah.
So I would argue that, you made that area different enough that I remember what was going on there.
Okay, yeah, okay. I'll take the compliment. I can do that.
Yeah, no, and but this kind of goes to that point though, that when you have like great descriptions, um, it will be people will be able to kind of pick up in the story if it's been, because when we game, oftentimes things fall through and games just kind of have a lull, and then when you're trying to remember where everything is, um, you'll just be like, oh, we were outside of House Ruth. What? The place with all the trees and the lions. Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think I also think there's a great way to a great point about this is you mentioned this earlier is tagging, and you can add little descriptive elements to every character. The scar on the guy, and I kind of did that with House Ruth. They've got the psychic lions, they've got this and that, all this other stuff that we didn't go into on this show. But the different houses, the different locations, the different alien races, they're kind of their thing going on. So, but they're also the characters. I think the most important one is tagging characters, because then you don't forget who they are. And because one character can get lost in the shuffle, especially in a game where you're not dealing with them as necessarily as enemies, that kind of thing, where you're just like, oh, I really want to take this guy out because he's a jerk or he's a monster or whatever. If there are a lot of NPCs who are more, actually, I will say, I think there's one rule that I think just applies from fiction, is that the more let me say, what's the word? The more ambiguous a character's motivation and purpose in the story appears, the more they have to stand out as a person or as an individual. So the more you want to provide a definitive tag for them, because otherwise people aren't sure why they're here. But if they stand out in a way that's really concrete, and I don't want to use examples from outside the game, but it did occur to me there were a couple characters in a book I recently wrote that was like that. That were like, okay, this guy's kind of like, his role in the story is like, I don't know exactly why he's here at first, so the reader isn't going to know either. And in this case, we can apply that to players. They won't know why your character is in the game if he's not immediately an enemy or an ally. But you want to make him distinctive, because then they won't forget about him. Because an enemy is like, well, I've got to worry about you. And an ally is like, I want to help you, or you can help me. And a person you just met on the street, well, you really need to have them stand out, or they're just going to get forgotten. Reason there.
Yeah.
If they're important anyway, right? But then and then because it's only certain characters, and then because and there's the other rule, there's the corollary to it, because if they're important, you want the PCs to remember them. But you don't want it to be too obvious that they're important if it's like a mystery game, especially like a Call of Cthulhu thing where you're trying to figure out who the cult leader is or something. I don't know what you do in Call of Cthulhu. I mean, I remember what I did.
I haven't done it since I want to say like last summer, but it does, like I was able to, get people to remember big characters through, using a descriptor or just a voice or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, you got that tool because you're good at voices. I think that's a useful ability to make a character, tag characters with, is they have this particular voice. I don't really have that ability. I just kind of have my one voice. Yeah. I also think there's ways you can tag characters. I mean, that's actually, we can get deeper into that, because I think that's one of the most important forms of description. Way it's also how if you describe how a character says something, a habit they have, these can all be tags. How they always say like that, or whatever. Or if they smoke a pipe, it's that kind of thing,
Or if they have like some sort of Lotsie, like a vocal gag.
Yes.
Like I remember that spider monkey thing that we did in that Savage Worlds campaign. With the biker, the one that was like or whatever laugh that was.
Oh, okay. I don't remember that. Savage Worlds.
It was the one with the biker in the gladiatorial thing.
Oh, right, of course, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, that's a character.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, my character was the biker. But also, like, just temperament is a huge thing with I think this is kind of going into the descriptors category now.
Yeah, yeah.
Because attitude, everyone from that group remembers who the Osprey was.
Oh boy, yeah, and playing any character. You really want to get into their attitude, and I mean the jokes
Yeah.
about this kind of delinquent superhero, right? A delinquent teenage superhero who was really,
Yeah.
he's kind of a simple guy, but he's always getting into trouble because he's also kind of violent.
Well, the thing is, the motivation behind him becoming a superhero was stress relief.
Yes.
Because he wanted to go out and he wanted to just beat the crap out of people, and he just has these bird powers. And whenever he gets frustrated, he's like, you know what? I'm gonna go beat up a thug right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Or like pick a fight with someone.
Yeah, it's that kind of stuff that so because description isn't always physical either. I guess that's part of it. And though I personally would say you shouldn't tell your players how they're feeling. I think that's generally a good rule of thumb. But you can tell people. But in like, for example, again, Recess, where there were a lot of psychic characters. Well, if you could find out what somebody else is feeling or thinking, that's a useful ability, and a lot of people had it, so it became part of the landscape to some degree. Yeah.
Or like, on the other hand, you can totally do something with the senses. Like, don't tell them how they emotionally feel about something, but physically, you feel a pain in your stomach, or you smell apricots or something in the air.
What do apricots smell like? Never mind. Yeah, no, that's a great one. I mean, you can have the monsters. Maybe the monsters smell like a particularly bad thing. I know, like, I forget what game it was. They smell like burning hair. It's like, ew. Like this particular kind of monster is the grossest thing you've ever smelled, and then some. Yeah, that's the kind of thing you can do, and also, but I also think there's a certain amount of just tone you can get across by the way you describe stuff. So that's kind of the thing. I mean, that goes to the exposition, right? If you do a Lovecraftian description of how terrible this thing is to look upon, that's going to provide a different attitude than, well, he's your average giant man-eating plant. We see them all the time. They're like citizens here.
Yeah. My favorite description I've ever read was on this Reddit for Call of Cthulhu, and the guy was like, "There's a dimensional shambler on all 5 sides of this square," and someone's like, "Wait a minute, there's only 4 sides in a square." That's right. Roll sanity.
Yes. Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, that's the kind of thing you can do a little. That's like the twist, right? Like, it's really cool. There's something wrong here. If you just say there's something wrong here, but you can't tell what, and then you have them look around for it, not so good. But that kind of thing, it tells them right away something's absolutely wrong here. And you have an idea that it has to do with space and time, maybe. Anyway, is there anything else you want to add about this? Do you think? Because I think we kind of did it. I think this is pretty good.
No, I mean, I think we're pretty much we got pretty on the nose right here with this one, since we have an author as a co-host. So, unless there's anything more to be said, this has been a Mooks and Monsters. You can find us at mentalcellularpublications.com. Please email us at podcast@mentalcellularpublications.com. Please follow both of us on Twitter. I'm at Stagehead. Tim's at TNeedleWriter. Like us on Facebook, and we've been hosted by Lipson.
Thanks for listening, folks. Talk to you later.